Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to ARCI's virtual forum number 30. It's a beautiful day in May here, and we've got a great series of presentations lined up. I'm Tom Zaczek, your moderator for today, and you can see the agenda on the screen, the four presentations we have. And after we do our presentations, we'll do our show and tell section, followed by items wanted, items for sale, and go to an open session at the end. The protocol is very simple. Stay on mute unless you have a question, and use the chat window to communicate information. Like somebody asks a question, you can ask a question there, and you can put the answer there. So if somebody has a unique request, that's a good way to do it. And then at the end, be sure and save the chat file. And if you have any feedback, please email us at that email address right there. We have two more virtual forum sessions by the end of the year in September and November. And so please consider being a presenter. So with that being said, I will start the presentation section. And our first presenter, Tom Kleinschmidt, isn't here today, but he recorded his presentation. And it's a very interesting topic, and hopefully this topic will lead to a series of presentations. So with that being said, I will bring up the next presentation by Tom Kleinschmidt.
This is a little different presentation than I normally do. I hope you find it interesting. What we're trying to do is actually document the Wells Gardner Company and their role in radio. They're a contract manufacturer, and not many people are that familiar with them. They made a number of iconic products, the movie dial radio, the 16-tube chrome set, and we're looking to maybe catalog all the pre-war Wells Gardner products, which are numerous under very many brand names. So here's what caused all this to happen. Bruce Eddy, who's a radio collector in Michigan, collected lots of documents, interviewed employees. He was looking to go document the Wells Gardner Company. Unfortunately, he passed away. His research came available from his friend Kim Herron, and Kim graciously offers it to Joe Coaster and myself, and Joe and I are collaborating on this project. We plan to do a series of articles in the ARCI newsletter and the Mark newsletter, which is actually the Radio Age publication, and the ARCI virtual forum like this, and maybe a few other places. And a long form document or a book is in the works, certainly not our expertise, but maybe something once we get enough articles and enough information together, we can evolve into that as the next step. So since Bruce is the impetus of this whole thing, we should talk a little bit about Bruce. His wife characterized him as a lifelong learner. He was into music and cars, drag racing, World War II, plants, physics, math, obviously radios. His uncle had a radio and TV repair shop, and that's where he learned his skill. He had a career at General Motors. He worked on the factory floor. He worked in the engineering lab, and he was married to Deb and had two sons, or has two sons. So let's talk about the documents. We did get 3 banker's boxes full of documents. On the original literature side, we have brochures and manuals and so on from the brands you see on the left, most of which I'm sure you're familiar with: Arlington, Airline, Coronado, Gilbronson, and so on. And we have catalogs from various companies that had their own house brand of radios as well, which Wells Gardner built. Cousins and Fern, who I hadn't heard of, but they're an Ohio company. J&R Motor Supply, which the ones I've got say Chicago on them. Montgomery Ward, everybody knows who they are, and Western Auto also. Montgomery Ward, of course, being the big gorilla in this thing. We were really fortunate to have full line catalogs from 1926 to 38. Not a complete set, but you can see the pictures on the color pictures on the bottom here. On the lower, on the right-hand side, that's a 1926, and we go up through 38. And interesting thing is they publish them by general region. You can see one of them says Portland on them, some of them say Chicago, there's some that say Baltimore. So that looks like they may have tweaked their catalogs a little bit for the local audience, or they may have just wanted to make it look more local. I'm not sure. We also have Wells Gardner service information and service bulletins. That's what you see up on the top here. Those are mostly copies, but they're nice and crisp and very useful. We have specific flyers from awards as well that are for radio or technology. You can think of technology in this case as being automotive, plumbing, radio, stuff like that. Those are short form catalogs, but there's a lot more information in those smaller publications than there are in the main catalogs. So that's the Montgomery Award side of life. Bruce made a list of brands and stores that that sold those brands, and you can see most of these here you're probably familiar with. Some of them are a little more obscure. I know of one or two others. He probably was also. We've got notes and binders and so on. There's a lot to go through to really appreciate all the work he went through. So in addition to what I just showed you, he put together a very comprehensive cross-reference of brand, model number to Wells Gardner series number to the rider schematic. That's kind of what you see in the background of this slide. He did interviews in the 1990s with Wells Gardner employees. He cataloged articles from various radio clubs, in-period magazine articles, wrote down what was in them, where they were, that sort of thing. Did research on phone books listings back to 1926 for employees and principals of the company. He made a list of institutions where he researched his materials, such as the Chicago Historical Society and various libraries. He's got copies of patents. He even has copies of litigation with the IRS. So where are we going from here? Well, first off, we have to put a plan together. We got to figure out what stories need to be told. What stories do you guys want to see? We need to organize things by a topic. So if we're going to go through and put a comprehensive thing together down the road, it'd be nice to have kind of a sequence for that. We have a lot of research data, and that again needs to be put into a story. So not only what stories, but what information we're going to use and how we're going to make it into a nice, clean, crisp outcome. We're also obviously have holes in the information we've got. There's a lot of it here, but there's probably a lot more. So anything you guys can help out with soliciting with photos and documents, that'd be great. And any researchers or co-authors are also welcome. So let's consider one of the topics, and that is the catalog of radios. We'd probably do it based on what you see in radiomuseum.org or various collector books, but it would be focused on Wells Gardner. If you go to any of these books, they're not organized by Wells Gardner, they're organized by the brand name. Perfectly rational, but doesn't give you a whole picture of what Wells Gardner can do. Again, pictures. If you've got a nice set, or even not so nice a set, just shoot us a picture. That'd be great, front and back. Then the quick way to understand if you have a Wells Gardner set, because for instance, airline radios in the 30s were made by Wells Gardner and Belmont, and maybe some others, but those were the two big players. If the label says WG24 on it, as you can see on the right, that's absolutely Wells Gardner. If it has a series number listed, that's very likely Wells Gardner, only because I don't know if anybody else used series numbers. So the question, of course, is everybody knows that WG stands for Wells Gardner. We don't know what 24 stands for. And 24 certainly is not a document number because the two documents on the right are completely different documents, but they both say WG24. So there was some reason for the 24, but maybe lost to history. Maybe somebody knows the secret sauce. Be fun to know the answer to that question or where to look. So last thing I want to talk about is Wells Gardner is still alive and well. They were bought by a Taiwanese company in 2014. There's actually two businesses, Wells Gardner Electronics, which is in Willowbrook, Illinois. Obviously used to be in Chicago way back when, but Willowbrook being a suburb, not that far away. And Wells Gardner Technologies, which is in Las Vegas, because they support the gaming industry. they're in the video display business primarily. So this is actually a screenshot of their homepage on their website with the stuff I overlaid on it. So there they are, wellsgardner.com, and they're still there. So that's all I've got, and I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Tom. Even though you're not here, thank you for doing that and recording that and starting this initiative. So to everyone out there, if you have something to contribute, get in touch with us, and specifically get in touch with Tom. So our next presentation is by Bob Lang. Bob has built a nice compact magic eye tube tester, which is a very cool device, and he's going to tell us about that right now. Bob?
Okay, there we go. Reason I built this was to try and give me a go, no go with the magic eye tubes to try and distinguish, is it the tube or is it the circuitry at that point, and at the same time test it out in a way that I don't have to bring out the Hickok tester and all these things. It's easier for me to just do it and then also see the effect on the target voltage on these units as to how they do it. The picture you're looking at is just screenshots of what's on the web that you can see and look up on there. Now, the Magic Eye has a triode section in there, plus its own little section in there that develops the deflection on the target. And they all have that in there. You need to have an amplification. That's what the triode's for. And then at that point, you can then, in essence, you could make your own if you wanted to and put it into a circuit if that was the case. But the way the tubes are, you have a 6U5, 6E5, you had a 1629, and you got various other ones that can be modified to be used with this little device. I used it in a way to make it small, compact, and run off of the a regular power supply that you can get for a computer or whatever you have available, used power supply, wall wart they call them. So I looked up various authors on this subject matter, and the way the tubes are viewed, you have different envelopes that the tubes come in. Now, and it gives you an indication of how they were made at the time. So you have the triode section below the target, and then at that point you have all the phosphorus that's on the top there that gets energized with the high voltage. And again, you have the various features with it, but the big thing to really realize is it a good tube? Is it a bad tube? How do you distinguish between that? And I wanted to build something that would kind of show and do a fast representation of it being in the circuit. So these are the different types of examples that you would see. Picture on the, again, I got a lot of information from the web on this, so anybody else can go and just really analyze it down. But you got the, when there's a high negative voltage, that's between -10, -20 volts on the grid, you get that where it closes it down. And then your varying in the grid voltage will give you the various opening or closing based on what voltage you're supplying to that tube. And then with no grid voltage, you get a totally open section of the eye tube. And again, the potentiometer for these varies there's two schemes on this. If we go to the next slide, there's the grid bias one, which is this. With the grid bias, it is what it says. You're biasing the grid on the tube. Now, the difference between this and the other one that you'll see is that this, you need a high voltage source, which is fine, and the 6.3 volts or 12.6 volts, depending on the tube you want to test. And you vary that amount of voltage going to the grid. It's the same circuitry that you would see in radios with the 1 meg between the plate and the target. And you can then power it up. And this is the grid side of things. Now, this is the one I chose, which was cathode. You'd be going after the cathode. You put a fixed voltage source or a fixed resistor system on the grid and heater too. And again, you still have the same target and plate resistor that goes in there, but you have these modules that you're already pre-built. You can just buy them off of eBay, and they're adjustable. The high voltage one can go from, the one I have right now can go from about 120 to 290 volts on the high voltage side. And then the little modules can go 12.6 volts, and they're variable. So I got 2 of those, one for the 1629, and I got another little module for the 6.3 volts. Now, in the various types of schemes that are on the webs, there's a gentleman that had talked about this. Now, what he did is he has a regular single pole double throw switch. But that does not alleviate the fact that if you have the switch in the wrong position, you're going to be hitting a tube with possibly 12.6 volts or 6.3. So I added a double pole double throw. This way I wanted to ensure that, to make simplicity, my choice of direction is to, I know in one direction I'll be hitting it with 6.3 for the 6E5, 6U5, and then in the other one I'll be using the other module for 12.6 for the 1629. The unit is made out of plastic. I used some tubes I had, majority of the parts I had all the parts. The box, I had to get a box, plastic box. I popped it out with Greenlee punches. You can get the punches at any location you care to. You can go on eBay and buy them if you wanted to. And I would say it's a 4-inch by 6-inch box. And it's very small, compact. The picture on the left shows the 3 modules. The bigger module is the high voltage, and the 2 other ones are the variable that you can vary from 6.3 to 12.6 or whatever you want in the lower voltage section. And all the negatives on the power supplies are tied together. So this way it's you have a commonality with that. Driving the whole system is a regular just power supply, pre-made, and it just says, and it does say, 13.5 volts DC, because the high voltage module can go up to 15 volts and then that's it. So I'm hitting a little bit harder than it's supposed to be, but at the point, this is what I had available to use. The picture on the right is when all the power is on, and you get to test these things out right away. And then also the cool thing about it is with the high voltage section, I can vary that power supply and see the effect on the target. Do I have enough left on the phosphorus to give me an indication with the magic eye tube? So, and that is a picture of a 1629 where it's plugged in. It has the switch is pointing towards the right, which is the socket on the right. And by varying the potentiometer, you can vary the target voltage, or how it reacts with the phosphorus, and either open or close that target, and vary, and give you a good indication. Is it a good tube or a bad tube? And can you view it? Can you really see this thing? So, and then there's the other one. The one thing that I noted was that when you put two tubes in, one is a 1629, the other one is a 6E5 or 6U5. The high voltage doesn't like that. It loads it down to the point that it does affect the operation of the tube you want it to use. The indication in this picture is the one of a 6E5 that's in there, and you got an idea of how it's supposed to look. And pretty much the whole thing that I tried to do is just present it in a way that I can find out if it's going to be working or not. And then if it's not working, then I know it's the tube. If it's working and it's not working in there, I know where I have to investigate. So the biggest thing you have to do with these is verify the characteristics of the tube being tested. What's the voltages that are supposed to be used on it? Adjust that high voltage so you can, into the characteristic operation of it. And you can increase the target to see if I was able to increase that target, that B+ voltage to it, will that help view the tube better? But with that comes a loss where you're pushing that phosphorus to a point where it's no longer going to be viable, and you're going to eventually have to, if you still want that to work, get another tube. There's still tubes out there, and you can still get them to go. Again, the overall goal was something that I don't have to spend a lot of money on, because I'm a cheap person overall. And at the same time, if it's stuff that I have and I can make it, I've been so associated with making things on my own that this was a pretty fun one to do and use. What I'd like to show you is, I have it in front of me. I will change my viewpoint here so you can see this. And so this is the unit. I have it on and everything. I apologize for the cameras. This is the best that you're going to get. So this tube is a 6U5 that I'm going to try out. And it says okay on it, but let's take a look. And let's get this thing to get in there. So with the 6U5, I adjusted the voltage so that it would be within the characteristics of the tube. Now, that being the case, it's not that great of a showing for the tube, but if I go in here and I adjust the voltage on the tube, let me do that without zapping the heck out of everything, and get that in here correctly. Bear with me. There we go. And I increased the voltage. You can see now I increased it to a point that you can view this now. You can see this. And by adjusting this, it doesn't open and close the viewing. You can see that it's working right in this, where am I? Right here. It's working in this section right here. I can open and close that. Now that's at the high end of the voltage scale, which again, that's 200 and some volts that's being placed on the target area. And it is your call as to how you want to see that operating. Now, if I bring that down and I put in I have a 1629 here and everything else, but the other thing I wanted to show you was you can look at the two different, this is the 6U5, you can see the target phosphorus. So if you're looking at these and you're going to the swap meets and you see the pictures that are there, this is what you want to see. There is a definite difference in the amount of phosphorus that's left inside these. So if I put this one in, you'll definitely see a difference in regards to its operation. And if I can ever get the pins to work into my direction. Now this is with the voltage pretty much done. It's going to heat up. It might blur out, but you can see the difference. Now again, it's just a little bit of signal on here that you see that's, hold on, let me get, all right, let me get you there. Apologize. It is opening and closing just in a small section of the aperture there, but at the same time, that's with the voltage all the way down. And yep, that's voltage all the way down. So, and it does, when you get voltage lower in regards to that, it'll open and close it easier so you can see its operation. I apologize on how it's looking on the screen, but it's the best I have available here to do. There is one thing in regards to the demonstration on this. You can go ahead and if you have the transformer, you have the higher voltage transformer, 160 or 150 some volts, and a 6.3. You can make the grid one, which is a direct representation of what the radio or the indication system is. But for as a fast test, you can buy these modules, and you do that. Now, if you try to use these modules in how they have this with a common ground between the modules, these units, because this is all AC driven side of the transformer, and on the other side here is my DC side, the positive and the negative. You can't do these with the modules. They don't like it. They don't. They will fight each other. What you can do, and I'm going to be determining that, is get a lower voltage supply and go through voltage doubler sections and put that in there and verify that that will operate. Because many of you may not want to have to go buy the modules, which is fine. But at the same time, this is more compact. You can take it with you if you want to go to swap meets and test out these things. But if you want to verify one with the grid bias network, you got to get a voltage source of 150 volts with a 6.3 volt winding. And that's good for a 6E5, 6U5. And at that point, you can either make one. If you got a transformer, rewind it, good luck. Or you can find one and do that with a voltage doubler. If you want to utilize the modules, I got mine through eBay. And it's called a DC-DC. It's really a boost converter. $8.64 for the high voltage. And then I got a lot of the 6.3, which is the, they're up to 3 amps, but they're adjustable, step down. And I got a lot of 10 of them for 12 bucks. So that was my way of proving that these devices can be tested a lot faster than pulling out and verifying. I mean, you're putting it under a true normal condition when you're doing it this way, where the tester, you might have questions on your tester. So hopefully you've had hopefully I'm not repeating this to people out there that's already done these things, but I just thought it was a cool idea for me to do, and I'll be using this for more radios I work on. Hope everybody enjoyed this.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, take
That
care.
was excellent and very creative of you to put that together like that with all that detail. That's awesome. And I particularly like how you showed the phosphor difference on those two tubes. That's something I learned. there was a question in the chat window from Art Bilski. I'll just read it. It says, in your work on eye tubes, did you ever uncover a way to rejuvenate a weak eye tube?
The only way of rejuvenating a weak eye tube is by adding more B plus to it. But as I said, when you do that, you're modifying the radio circuit already by looking for a higher voltage source. And there's no way, I mean, once the phosphorus on that thing, it's like when you had cathode ray tubes, TV tubes and everything, you try to strip off any of the filaments to try and get more emissions coming out of them, you start to weaken the tube even more. So I have not found anything that would allow for that.
Yeah, and the reason I asked is I have about a half a dozen 6T5s that are all weak, and I'd love to rejuvenate them somehow.
The one thing that I'm working on that I haven't finalized is there's a gentleman in Canada that I found, and he made a electronic eye tube. It's out there. And I spoke with him. I conversed with him in Canada, and I have a electronic eye tube that has 0630 LEDs, the little tiny ones that with my eyes, I struggled. And I just have to put it together in the envelopes and test it out on this system now. So I have two of those. I put one together and I kind of put the rest on the side because it took me so long, and it was a very tedious process with those little tiny chips that you have to get them in a certain polarity and make sure it's right, and testing while you're doing it. So, and it uses the LM3916 comparator, or it's almost like an audio a VU meter chip that's used in there to represent electronic version of the eye tube. So I'll be working on that next.
Well, Bob, that sounds like another presentation.
Yeah, I think there was a LED eye tube made about 10 or 15 years ago, and I want to say the name was Koyo or Toyo. I have one somewhere in my garage that you couldn't tell from a distance. If you look close, you could see the individual LEDs.
Well, it's the same way that what I have is that you have 130 little LEDs that represent on a 0630 basis, which is like I don't know, the head of a small miniature screwdriver that you're trying to solder onto a board, and at that time you put a diffuser in front of it that will give you the same representation of the eye tube. So I'm almost there, but I'm kind of yeah, I guess you got to get a different mind. My old brain mindset's got to change and say, well, let's get back, let's finish this project and not have it sit there. So Tom, to your point, I will probably show everybody that one when it's unless somebody's already got it out there. So
we haven't seen it on the virtual forum, so
okay, so
see it soon. One more question came in on the chat from Derek. That's his question is EM34 and EM35 tubes are rare and expensive. Are any substitutes available?
It all bases itself on, are you willing to modify your circuitry to do that? Again, you have the basic operation of the eye tube, negative grid, and then a high voltage section in there to get to trio going. You can do that with the EM34s and stuff too. There's stuff that's out there that if you're willing to experiment with, you'll get it to work for you. I mean, I don't give up too easy when if I have something and it's like, I don't want to spend extra dough on this stuff. And if I have extra tubes, I'll find a way of making them work. So.
Okay, Bob. Well, thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions for Bob? Okay, Bob. Well, thank you very much for that excellent presentation. I'll wrap it up by saying we look forward to the electronic LED version of the eye tube up in the future sometime.
You're holding me accountable, aren't you now?
I am.
All right.
Okay, thanks. Our next presenter, Greg Van Beek, has done a number of presentations for us. And Greg is a longtime restorer and has a presentation about the Radio Attic, which is a site that I use all the time as a reference. And Greg is going to give us a little more in-depth on the Radio Attic. Greg?
Like I said, I want to thank Tom for putting these slides together for me, and I want to thank Matt for being inspiration for this presentation. So it's a team effort for all of us, and many of you already know about the Radio Attic. Steve Adams, who runs it, was in touch with me this past week and wanted me to mention that this is the 25th anniversary of the site. So it's been on the internet for quite some time, and at the end of the presentation, we'll show he's got a contest coming up where you can get a sizable chunk of money to use towards the purchase of radios. So what is a Radio Attic? If you're interested in old radios and are a collector or seller, just want to do research on radios, is a great place to go. Like I say, many of you already know about the site, and this presentation is mainly for those who aren't aware of it or want to learn more about how it works and what it all entails. As I said, it was founded by Steve Adams from Birmingham, Alabama in 1996. And those are a few links on there showing the home page. We'll see a slide of that. I think it might be even next, which shows that every day there's 2 featured radios. Okay, the goal of the Radio Attic is just to provide a one-stop shop where you can find old radios that are restored and you can purchase them at a set price and avoid eBay. And every ad on the Radio Attic has the name of the seller and a means of direct contact, and the sellers on Radio Attic important all know how to properly pack a radio for secure shipment. Most are collectors themselves and not just someone looking to sell off their clutter. And as with eBay, it's a 50-50 chance you get what you bought in undamaged state. I know that many of us who've bought radios on eBay have horror stories, and Steve is no exception. He actually has a whole page on the Radio Attic just with his horror stories. And of course, Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace are notorious for scammers. You got to be a little careful there. This is actually the home page. This shows there are 2 radios featured every day. They update that every day with 2 radios that are just chosen at random by their system. And it tells you how many radios have been sold this past year and how many visits to the site. As you can see, the page was visited 234,340 times last year. So that's a lot of clicks and a lot of traffic on one website. And just this past year, as of April, I think 15th, I think Tom actually got this slide. He was the 70,000th visitor. Okay, this is just some frequently asked questions about this site, and I won't go through all of these, obviously, for time constraints, but if you go to that link on top, you can see more about what the who and the what and the how the site works. It's anybody who wants to have a space of their own on the internet to sell radios is welcome on Radio Attic, with a caveat, and we'll get to that in I think the next slide. These are the advantages of buying from a seller on Radio Attic. As I said, you know who the seller is. You can see photos of the radio. Every radio has a set selling price, and this is not an auction site, so you don't have to place a bid or worry about an auction closing and being online when it does. And you can contact the seller and get all the details about any radio which you're considering to purchase. And lastly, there's no pressure. If the shipping cost makes the total more than you want to invest, you can simply decline the offer and go on with your day. There's no you're under no obligation up front. This is just a little bit of self-promotion. This is my Radio Attic page. I've been selling on there since August of 2021. And just gives you an idea of how the pages are set up. You can see those 3 radios are actually sold, and they get marked sold when I tell them that they've been sold. And they stay on there for a while, but you can see you have a description of each radio. When you click on the link, there's at least 6 pictures he gives you of each radio, so there's all different views of it. And you just contact the seller by clicking on their name. It's a highlighted link. It'll take you to their email address. Let's see what we got next. Okay, when you go to Radio Attic and you click on radios for sale, this page tells you all the sellers that are selling on Radio Attic. They're all the names, all the different people who are selling. And you click on their name, and it'll tell you which radios they have available at any given time. Now, if you look on the bottom of the screen, there's the alphabet, each of the letters. If you click on one of those letters, it takes you to all the radios that start with that letter. For example, if you click on A, you can find all the Atwater Kents, all the Arvins, etc. So it's a good way to search for, if you're looking for a certain make and a certain model, you can just search for it by the first letter of the make. And there are a few disadvantages to buying from a seller on Radio Attic. Number one being the cost to buy. The sellers set their own prices, and as such, the prices vary greatly. With some sellers are pricing their sets so that only buyers with deep pockets can afford them. So it pays to shop around. And of course, rare sets and those more moderately priced tend to sell quickly. And new listings go live at midnight at Central Time each night. And sometimes they sell within the first hour of them going live. So there's no guarantee that you'll be the first in line to purchase a set. You need to act quickly, kind of like at a swap meet. The early bird gets the worm, I guess. And most listing prices don't include shipping costs, and that's another thing. They can typically add $50 or more to the total cost, depending on the distance from the seller to the buyer. My own experience is distances over on the West Coast, California, just for a small All-American 5 double box sent FedEx home delivery can run at least $50, $60. And many times that's at least a third of the cost of what you're asking for the radio. So that can sometimes be a deal breaker. The cost of using the Radio Attic is totally free to buyers. There's nothing to sign up for, no fees involved, or anyone can browse and purchase sets. But for those chosen by Steve to be a seller on the site, he charges 5% of your listing price. So if you list a radio for $100, he gets 5% of that. Now eBay, as I understand it, is the costs are up to about 13% or more of fees. So your asking price is your listing fee. And it includes up to 6 photos of your radio with each ad and a minimum of $5 listing fee. So if it's less than, $5 is less than your price, you still have to pay $5 to list it. So how to purchase a radio. If you want to inquire about a radio, just go to the top of the Attic page on where the radio is published, and you'll find the hyperlink with the seller's name, and in some cases a telephone number and a snail mail address. If you click on their name, generally it'll pop up a blank email, and you just type in the make and the model you're interested in and email the seller that you're interested in purchasing it, and along with any questions you have. At a minimum, provide your zip code to the seller so that he can calculate a shipping cost to your area. And if you agree to the final cost with the shipping, you'll need to provide your name and a street address and a phone number to the seller and decide how you would like to pay. Most sellers accept PayPal, or some will take a bank cashier's check or a postal money order. And of course, ask to provide a tracking number once the set is shipped, and most will automatically do this so that you can tell when your radio will be delivered. Next slide. Okay, this is how to sell on the Radio Attic. If anyone wants their own space on the internet to sell a radio, your Radio Attic page will always have the same URL for you to use in printed ads or business cards or whatever. But the important thing to note is selling on the Radio Attic is done by invitation only. Steve has set a minimum of 6 or more radios, depending on value, cosmetic appearance, and other factors for new advertisers. He also evaluates the restoration status and as a condition for inclusion in the attic in an effort to spotlight high-quality restored consumer radios. This is intended to focus on advertisers who intend to establish a semi-permanent residence on the site. And not everyone is guaranteed a page on the site. The Radio Attic is not like a newspaper where you send in a classified ad and you pay your money and your ad gets published. New sellers are here by invitation only, and as much as the quality of the radios you have for sale, Steve cares about the quality of the residents of his website. So if you're interested in becoming a seller on Radio Attic, there's Steve's email address. It's just steve@radioattic.com. And he'll want to see photos and descriptions and prices of the initial group of radios you have to advertise, and information about your radio collecting history and how many radios you intend to sell, and whether or not you're looking for a permanent place to sell your radios. And the big thing, there's a $100 setup fee payable after you're invited to participate. And this setup fee is non-refundable, but it is credited to your account and used for payment of your monthly invoices. He bills you each month for however many radios you've listed, so that the $100 will eventually get used up the more radios you sell. And after a period of lengthy inactivity, I'm going to say at least 6 months, Steve will remove your Radio Addict page. So it's important to keep at least a few radios available at all times. Now, some of the other uses for the Radio Addict. This is important, identifying your radios, as Tom has alluded to. If you go to the home page, you click on sold radios, you can click on to see all the sold radios that are grouped by manufacturer. So for example, if you have a radio that has no model number on it, and you're trying to identify it, but you know the make of it, you can click on that make and look at all the radios that have been sold by that manufacturer, and hopefully be able to find the one that you have and identify what year it is and the model number. And all the listings contain the year of manufacturer, the make, and the model number. So if your model number is missing or unknown, as I said, it's a great research tool for your model to locate within it, and also to locate a schematic based on that model number. And you can also see current listings by a manufacturer as well. If you go to the main home page and click on radios for sale, it's, as I said previously, you click on the first letter of the make and you can see all the ones that are currently available. And this is just an example of some of the Arvin radios that have been sold on Radio Addict. As you can see, they're grouped by model number, kind of in numerical order. And it also gives you an idea of not just the model number, but also the prices realized for some of the radios, and in some cases the various colors they came in. So it's a great research tool, even if you have no interest in purchasing a radio. I've used it many times in identifying radios. That site and Radio Museum seem to be the go-to sites to find out what you have. And if you have any questions, but maybe Matt can go live now if you'd like, and we'll show you the home page and the contest that they have running, which I think a lot of you will be interested in, because Steve is giving away $500 towards the purchase of a radio or several radios if it adds up to less than $500 from a Radio Addict seller for his 25th anniversary, which is very generous of him, I'd say. There it is. And I've actually told Steve about Radio Fest. So he's got that on his homepage as well, advertised, and some of the other events coming up in, well, this past month and the months ahead.
Yeah, I see that in the text box there near the bottom. It's giving a nice call out for the Radio Fest.
So if you click on the very top red line where it says Radio Addict is 25th anniversary, there's a link right there. That's the one. And there it tells you get one $500 coupon to use for the purchase of a radio at Radio Addict. And it gives you the information. Basically, you just have to email him your name and address and contact information. He chooses at random one lucky winner. And I think it, let's see, when is it? Needs to be redeemed by September 1st. I think the contest ends on August 1st is when he chooses the winner. So that's a good excuse right there to visit Radio Addict. You can get a $500 certificate to purchase a radio. That's a great deal.
Thank you, Greg. That was excellent, and lots of good information there on how to use Radio Addict. I know I use it all the time as a research tool, and thanks for enlightening us on how to be a buyer or a seller. Any questions for Greg?
I think one just came in the chat.
Oh, okay. Are the prices shown for sold radios the actual selling price after any negotiation, or the asking price?
I believe they're the sold prices. That's what the sellers got for them. Now there is some negotiation. Some sellers will do that. I know on my site, if you purchase more than one at a time, I'll give you a bundle deal on them. But for the most part, they're at set prices, and it depends if you bought more than one radio from a seller, they might cut you a break on them. But those are generally the prices of what they sold for. And like I said, they go for all different prices. There's some sellers who consistently sell for $800-900 or more for a wood cabinet radio from the 30s. And of course, for many of us, that's out of our budget. But like I say, it pays to shop around.
And part two of Derek's question is, in other words, are these prices a good indication of market value at the time of sale?
I would say generally yes, but it pays to look at all the different examples of a certain model to see the price ranges. You know, some of them are going to be, you're going to have a high end of the range and you're going to have a low end of the range. And somewhere in the middle, I would say, is a fair market value.
Okay. Any other questions for Greg? All right. Well, thanks very much for doing that, Greg. That was excellent. And we look forward to your next presentation.
Well, thank you. And thanks again for putting those slides together. You did a great job.
You're welcome. Our final presentation today is more of a photo tour. Ed Schumacher contacted us and said, "Hey, I've got these photos from my grandfather from World War I." And it's a fascinating story. And he brought these photos and put them on some simple slides. So it's not a very detailed text presentation, but it's kind of a picture show with a lot of good stories behind it. So we'll get those pictures up and I'll turn it over to Ed.
Okay, very good. Well, a little background here. Yes, my grandfather was in the Signal Corps during World War I. The reason this presentation came up was because at the last online meet, there was a photo of a graduating class from the Signal Corps back then. And I thought, boy, wouldn't that be something if my grandfather was actually in that particular picture, but pretty small chance of that. I inherited through my mom a old photo album, and these were the direct photos that my grandfather took while he was over. And I think most of these were taken around Cochem, Germany. He was in the Signal Corps. He was doing snapshots, probably unauthorized, but it's a little tour through. He passed away a long time ago when I was still too young to get stories directly from him. But these are some of the things that he photoed while he was over there. And fortunately, my mom saved them and put them into an album. That, I assume, is him. I do remember hearing that he also rode a dispatch motorcycle around and apparently fooled around with him when he got back after the war. So these are pictures of his group. Now, I don't think this one, well, no, this had to be over in Germany somewhere too. All of these were taken overseas. Good look at the bike with the sidecar. If anybody is a World War I expert and recognizes particular things in here as far as equipment, I'd like to know what some of these things could be. Here starts a short sequence where a bunch of the guys were playing ball, and I did get this. All of a sudden, there was a lot of commotion, and he swung from taking pictures there to the local fire department, putting out the fire in the town's railroad station. This fire was caused by the Signal Corps installation's battery set catching fire, and it burned the train station. They had set up in that building because it was brick, and I don't know how happy the folks were about that, but it was caused by the battery set from their station. This is a field setup of some sort. Would assume that may be some sort of a mast set up for an antenna. A couple of the guys with a possibly a field set that they were either operating or testing. These, I assume, are actual signal corps vehicles that may have been rolling installations. As you can see, not a lot of ID, very early type vehicles with just a box arrangement on the back with a window or two, and a couple of the members of the group. And you can, I recognize the countryside, those hillsides are very typical of along the German rivers. So I know he was inside Germany at this point. So the war must have ended, and I believe they were all still there as part of an occupation. Here is an interesting piece of equipment. Armored treads. Don't know if it's an armored bulldozer. Definitely not quite a tank of the day, but a very interesting looking piece of gear that he snapped a picture of. Another view of one of their balloons. Now, I'm not sure if these also supported antennas or if they were strictly barrage balloons that would be put up. You can tell it's fairly good size, judging by all the handlers there on the ground getting ready with it. And it took me a while to remember that the bullseye logo on there, that was the US logo. At first, when I saw these, I said, oh, that's British. Nope, that was the American identifying logo at that point in time. Here is an actual shot he took of some of their radio gear. And as you'll see, there isn't a microphone in sight, strictly the telegraph key. What the different units are, I couldn't tell you for sure, but quite a few separate units there for radio receiving and transmitting apparatus. And then I believe the next one is, I think, one of the other members sitting at the mill with the headphones on, a different bank of equipment behind him. You can see a large coil to the left center there, probably their antenna link. This might be a photo from inside one of those trucks. So this is a photo that I've used now for my Skype ID photo with our Northern Illinois group, because I don't think that's my grandfather. I think it's one of the other fellas. And they did have some R&R time in the little town there. They would get together, have some time in their off hours. And there were a couple of photos like this, showing that, I think this was definitely at the end of the war. They were in an occupation capacity by that time. The first photo did show next to him, and that was my grandfather in the very first slide. There's a small blue book, and it was printed there locally with a full list of all the names and home addresses of all the members of their company. And I had a number of these items on display quite a few years back at one of our groups. Yeah, Company A for, let's see, 310th Field Signal Battalion. Yeah, Cochem, Germany, 1919. And it has a complete list of the home addresses so all the gang could keep in touch after they got back. So that and some of these photos, I do have his 1917 engineering department compass, still in my possession. And I just thought it'd be interesting to show, early radio. And when my grandfather came back from the war, he did end up going to work for Western Electric. Another story that I did pick up on, he was sort of a go-getter. And while in Paris, he wangled his way up to the top of the Eiffel Tower to get a look at the French radio station up there, which at that time was one of the most advanced in the world. And it was strictly off limits to Americans or anyone else. And he managed to get a look up there. I don't know if he took any information back to Western Electric when he went there. Maybe that's why they hired him. But he was worked for the Western all then from the 20s, the 30s into the 40s, retired out of there, and never knew for sure what his exact job was. My mom said he was sort of a general troubleshooter for them, would spend his time walking the floors of the Hawthorne Works here in Cicero and seeing if things needed improvement, were being done right, could be done better. I know he was sent out in later years. He would go out to Red Sands where they were testing missiles that were using guidance system components provided by Western Electric. So just an interesting character. And unfortunately, he passed away while I was still pretty young, so I didn't get a lot of direct input from him. But, just the collection of his photos that still exists, I thought could be interesting to folks. And if anybody recognizes any of that radio apparatus or any of those vehicles, let me know. It'd be kind of fun to pin some actual identification on it. So that's pretty much it. A little bit of show and tell and early radio.
Thanks, Ed. That was great. I enjoyed seeing those photos from way back. And any questions? Any questions?
I do still have his 1929 gray bar radio right outside the door here in the hallway. He bought it at the Western Electric store on Cermak Road, right across from Hawthorne. And it plays. And I did acquire an original companion speaker for it, though he later bought one of the RCA mantelpiece speakers to play with it. And that radio works. So he had, he stayed with the electronics after getting out of the service in the Signal Corps.
That's great, Ed. That was a wonderful walk down memory lane, I'm sure, and it was interesting to see that sort of thing, and especially those old radios and the state of the art back then. Okay, well, at this point, what I will do is I will thank everyone for attending today and doing the presentations. It was a great set of presentations, and I learned a lot about some things that I'd never even considered before. So at that point, I'll just say good afternoon.